What's going on, folks? Shane here, one of the Focus missionaries at Christ the King. It's the day before Thanksgiving, which for me, when I go back home, means that I'm going probably out to Molly's Pub. And maybe you don't have a Molly's Pub in your town, but I'm sure y'all know what I mean when I say it's usually a high school reunion. You're faced with all the people and friends you used to go to school with or that you haven't talked to in a long time. And going to places like Molly's Pub or whatever your high school reunion bar is during the holidays, or maybe even just the home, beyond the relationships that you encounter, you're kind of encountered with the spaces that bring forth a lot of memories, maybe some really awesome memories, but also maybe some tough memories. And so when I'm in these spaces, whether the people are there or not, I'm often faced with the question of how do I face my old self? Before, when I was living in these spaces 4 or 5 years ago, I wasn't necessarily living with a greater intentionality, and I certainly wasn't trying to live in my relationship with the Lord. And now that I've had the chance to experience conversion and renewal in my life, it's just this really weird tension that comes forth of like, dang, it's kind of hard to be in these spaces. I kind of want to readopt the habits or the mentality that I had then. And so I have a few thoughts on how we face our old self. First and foremost, we do this with Christ. I think the hardest thing when we're in these spaces, oftentimes we can be alone. But Christ, when he comes and before he ascends into heaven, he gives us a commission, and it's accompanied with a promise that he would be with us to the end of the age. Likewise, in the Old Testament, the Lord, whenever he commissions one of the prophets to go do something really hard, usually, he gives them the promise that he will give them that which is necessary to profess his word. He will be with them, that though they might endure tribulation and scrutiny, that it will not be for none. The second piece is that we need to surround ourselves with the accountability and community that first brought us maybe even to Christ, or that we live in that relationship with. The paralytic in Mark chapter 3, who's lowered down into the house, has his community of people who he needed to be able to encounter Christ, and he needed to rely on them. And so if you don't even have that community, maybe you do have the community, stay in touch with those people when you're home. But if you don't, find that friend or find those few friends that you can still stay in touch with, so that you can be edified and not be alone in the struggles that you may face being back in your homeland. The last piece, and this might be the most important piece, and something I wish I had understood a while ago, which is the need to be merciful with yourself. The reality is going home is tough. Just being in those spaces is tough. Nevertheless, the relationships that we're going to face. And so while we're hopeful that we won't readopt the old ways, the old habits, the likelihood is that we'll be tempted to. And in a number of situations, we may actually fall into those temptations to readopt the old ways, to have one too many drinks, to binge on Netflix, to lack charity in those conversations that you have with the family members or the friends who annoy you or frustrate you. And so it's important in these spaces that, like Peter, we allow the Lord to still step into our life and bring forth a renewal and a conversion. Peter, at the end of the Lord's ministry, his passion, death, he commissioned them. What did Peter do? Peter went off and went back home to go fish. But the Lord came back. He stepped into it. He called him out upon the beach, and he brought forth a renewal in Peter's life, another conversion which he was open to receiving. And so my encouragement to you is that if you do find yourself in these situations, to always approach the Lord again. Paul, in his letters to the Romans, he says, the Lord makes all things new for those who love him. And the Lord wants to bring forth a renewal as you encounter your old self. Your old self, the Lord doesn't want it to be an obstacle for you encountering him. He wants you to see the old self alongside him, so that he can reveal to you the ways he's loved you, both in those times and through the seasons of life that have passed since. Know of my prayers for you as you venture into encountering your old self. Maybe enjoy a drink or two at Molly's.